call.
How is there even 600 years in the pot before the flop? What happened? For everyone who loves poker movies and everything around it, here are 4 great scenes and my reaction as a poker professional. So the first movie is none other than the most famous Casino Royale Bond movie. Super nice setup, and it obviously is very nicely filmed. There's this big hand that they get all the chips in the middle, and it's 4-way. Let's take a look at the hand.
All in, 6 million.
5 million, all in.
4 million, 5 million all in. I think actually most of it is pretty standard. The 2 first players, pretty standard. Obviously with like 4 players in the pot, maybe a flush is a bit ambitious here, but the full house is very standard. Le Chiffre raises to 12, then James Bond goes all in for 40.5 million, and then he thinks and calls. Calling with ace-6 here is definitely a mistake. He either has a bluff, which is just very, very unlikely here, or a better hand. So sorry, Mr. Le Chiffre, don't kill me, but I think your play is pretty misplayed for the extra 28 million you put in the pot. So if I were in his shoes, I would have folded the ace-6 because he could have ace-8 or a straight flush. And in this particular spot, it's actually much more likely he has this hand than a bluff. And I think that ace-6 is a fold here.
5 and 7 of spades. The straight flush. 4 to the 8. The high hand. Monsieur Pond wins.
So from a poker player perspective, I think it's a nicely chosen setup, but if I would be Mr. Le Chiffre's coach, we would have folded the hand on the river. Now this second scene is actually one of my all-time favorites. I think it's such a nice dynamic. It's such a cool, identifiable character as well. And it's out of Rounders, one of the most legendary poker movies, if not the one. And it's the scene where Teddy KGB plays against Matt Damon, the main character, and it is a really cool scene, very tense. And there's a few different episodes. The first one, the cookie tell, which is a cool one, and then the second one, the grand finale. Let's take a look and jump right into it. So in this first scene, Matt Damon folds the ace-5 open after he's seen or has got the tell on Teddy, and Teddy is frustrated. How can he do that?
I'm laying this down, Teddy. It's a monster hand, I'm gonna lay that down. Because you got 2-4 and I'm not gonna draw against a made hand.
The fuck did you lay that down?
Not hungry?
He realizes and throws away the cookies. I think a pretty cool scene. I think just the dynamic of it and how it's played, I just really like it. Although it's not very realistic, not something that would happen. People aren't really eating cookies at the table, but maybe in a different setting. Would be possible to have a read on a player like this and make big folds like that. So not entirely unrealistic, but the deuce-4 in the hand, putting your opponent on deuce-4 in this particular spot, maybe not something that would happen in exactly this fashion, but still somewhere between unlikely to happen and not very realistic, but still the scene is just cool. Now let's take a look at the second scene of it where all of the money goes in the middle. It's so tense, like bet, bet, bet. So let's take a look. I just love this part.
Check.
2 grand?
Now the board is, I think, 6, 7, 10, deuce, ace, and there's this whole back and forth of like Teddy splashing the chips in the pot, flop, turn, and then shoves on the river, puts all of the chips in the middle. He's sitting there with the stone cold nuts, calls him. Teddy goes super rage mode, super pissed off.
You're right, Teddy, the ace didn't help me. I flopped the nut straight.
All night he chick. He trapped me. Niet. Pay that man his money.
What I really like about it is it also shows the depth of the character of Teddy. He could fuck him over, take all his money back, but he says, "Niet, pay the man his money." And I really like this about him as well, is like he lost the money, he's angry, he's going back in his room and probably gonna smash some stuff up, but he also has honor and stands to his word. And I really like this about it. I think it's this nice mix of the competition, but also then Teddy having honor and making sure that he gets paid even though he just got beaten out of a huge pot. I think that scene was a really cool dynamic and I really loved it. One of my favorite poker movie scenes. All right, now let's get to scene number 3, one of the most absurd ones in my opinion, because it's just so like not pokery, but let's take a look at the movie In Time, where they put all the money in the middle, or their lifetime in the middle, and let's take a look at what's happening there. They're betting with their lifetime, and now they play this hand where the board is Queen Jack 5-7. The opponent is betting, and the main character is now calling with 4-8 offsuit. He bets also less than 10% pot, like 50 years into a 600-year pot. And then the guy calls. Then there's 700 years in the middle. And then he bets 200 years, so a third pot. And then the guy calls. How is there even 600 years in the pot before the flop? What happened? Like raise and call. The river is the 6, so he binks his gut shot. It's just like the most absurd poker hand. I mean, A, how does the guy get there? And what's the scene even about? You stupidly put in all your lifetime to then bink a backdoor gut shot? I watched this scene, I was like, who advised him? I'm like, this is going to be, the main character is going to get there with 8 high and he binks a turn, backdoor gut shot, and then drills it on the river, and then that's the scene. And then he's so cool, and then he stays there with like 30 seconds left on his life, and it ticks down, and then he reveals his hand, and like a few seconds left, he gets all his time back. I mean, like, God, this is just so miserable. Definitely an award for one of the worst poker scenes. Even though the filming and the tension is nice, if you have no idea about poker, it's probably interesting, but I watched it and it's just absolute cringe. Sorry. And now scene number 4, one for the heart. So heartwarming, out of the movie Lucky You. And it's about the final. There's still 3 left, and father and son, and they're playing poker. And then there's this big pot on river. Let's take a look what happens.
Turn is a deuce of spades.
Another 5 to go.
LC bets 500,000.
Call.
Huck calls. River's the 8 of hearts.
So here we are. Here we are. All in.
LC Cheever is all in.
Call.
Huck calls.
He bets, and then his father goes all in, and he calls, and the father, for some reason, shows pocket kings, which I think, in terms of the action, probably not really a thing to raise there with kings. It's probably just a call, because you're mostly beat when you go all in and your opponent calls. I mean, on really high level, maybe it's a thing, but in this particular spot, it's probably a bit over the top. But I think the interesting part about this hand is the son sees the hand, and you can see, I think it's actually quite decent acting and a nice scene that he mucks the winning hand to his father to let his father have this moment.
Nice hand.
They're good. Woo! LC Cheever wins the pot.
This part I think is nicely done. It's something that I could definitely see happening. I think it's nice and easy to put yourself in those shoes as well, how emotional a spot like this can be. Your father maybe not making the best play, you having a strong hand, and then you see it, and in a moment you realize it. You're like, hey, actually, you know, let me give him this moment. I like the scene. I think it's kind of heartwarming. I think reasonably well done. Would be nicer probably if it would be heads up and for the win, and then you muck for the win and your father wins. But in this spot, he busts this third. Still a nice scene. I think decently well done. All right, so those were 4 movie scenes that had to do with poker and my reaction as a poker professional. I hope you like this type of content. If you do, I would be very thankful for a subscribe. Just keeps me going and shows some appreciation for the content. So would love that. And I wish you guys a wonderful rest of the day. So keep crushing.